that provide critical services and benefits to our community that we sometimes take for granted. Nonprofit Insider is a chance to hear about the organizations that touch so many in our community. The opinions expressed in Nonprofit Insider are not necessarily those of WMPG, its staff and underwriters, or of USM. Well, we every week before the show we have about a 15-minute warm-up with the guests, and I don't know where the show's going to go today based on the warm-up, but I have confidence it's going to go well. Today we have Eric Meyer. Is it Meyer or Mayer?
Meyer.
Meyer, President and CEO of Spurwink Services, and Judy Ann Smith, VP of Strategy and Government Relations of Spurwink. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, you struggled in through the weather and getting ready for the heat wave?
Absolutely. Yeah, the clear day today made it very, very nice.
Good. So, how would you describe Spurwink?
Spurwink Services is an agency that provides behavioral health and educational services for kids, adults, and families over most of the state of Maine.
And how many offices do you have?
Well, we have really a combination of offices, schools, residential facilities that tally up probably over 100 across the state. 6 schools, including a therapeutic preschool, high schools, and others in various locations, residential facilities, and outpatient care as well for mental health treatment and psychiatric services.
So, when you talk about the types of services, you have a complete full range of services for all age groups.
That's correct, exactly.
In 3 sentences, how would you describe the type of people who would receive your services?
Well, first of all, I can't think of anybody in the state of Maine that at some point in their life might not have a need or a desire to access services from us. So people with struggling with any kind of a mental health need or behavioral health need, so that could be depression, that could be a struggle with children in school with attention deficit disorder, that could be a person with autism or a developmental disability. So any of those kinds of needs, and that's when people seek us out.
Okay. And Judy Ann, you have a long title. What do you do?
Well, I do a bunch of different things. I spend a lot of time following regulatory changes that go on that impact the services and thus the people that we serve. So the services we provide are often regulated by state and federal rules. And so that's the sort of thing that I do. I follow what's going on in Augusta, and I follow a little bit of what's going on in Washington, D.C., and I involve myself with other provider groups through community organizations and chamber work, letting the business community know what we do and that we're out there and how we're helping to serve the folks that maybe they employ.
And can I just add something really quickly to that? So one piece that's really important at Spurwink is relationship with clients and people that receive services, relationship with each other at the agency, and with stakeholders in the community. And a big part of Judy Ann's job is to help make sure that our relationships in the community with legislators, with business leaders, with people interested in what we do, that she's out there and helping explain what we do and maintaining those relationships.
Oh, it sounds like an 80-hour week in itself.
It is.
Now, Spurwink is a nonprofit, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what issues are you seeing in the nonprofit world today?
Well, for us in particular, I find sort of a constant focus on the issues around regulatory change as well as the cost of health care. So one of the things that's really important to me is being able to support our employees. We have a lot of staff around the state, and the cost of health care has been a real challenge for us as a nonprofit organization. And then the regulatory environment, both at the state level, the local level, and the federal level. There are constant changes that happen. It's just part of our environment. It's not a problem per se, but it's definitely something that you have to stay on top of and be constantly adjusting to.
Now, the state is constantly changing, from what I understand, the regulations about how you get reimbursed and what they call the waivers, and how you provide services, and even in terms of the person-centered plan
Sorry.
of how much responsibility the individual you're serving has in their own planning process. How's an organization your size roll with those changes? You weren't expecting that question.
We just stay very closely connected with the leadership in the department and with other associations that are following it on a full-time basis. So they're sitting in the legislature quite often, or they're working on work groups about the rates and about the different pieces that you just mentioned. And our connection with those groups helps us have some lead time in planning. When you get that, we don't always get it, but when you get it, it's really nice, and it helps us to plan, because it is. We're a larger organization, but I think the challenge is equal for the smaller organizations, because no change is easy.
Right. Is it a fair statement to say you're probably, if not the one of the largest providers in the state?
Yes, that's a fair statement.
What advice would you give a smaller provider who doesn't have the type of resources that you do to roll into these kind of transitions that go on? And
Just to build on the statement that Judy Ann made a minute ago, there are provider associations, for example, that where people come together to be able to learn from each other, as well as to stay on top of what's happening at the state level or the federal level. That's a critical resource. And for a smaller organization, or maybe a new organization coming together, get connected with your peers. And I guess that would be the main piece of advice I would offer.
And it's all about the relationships that you
Correct.
keep going back to.
It really is.
Exactly. Well, and it's so funny because that's embedded in our mission and really in our vision for the work that we do, is the relationship with clients, with staff, and in our communities. And as long as we stay focused on our mission, we feel like we can be successful.
Well, that's a great philosophy. How do you feel about Governor LePage's statement that nonprofits don't pay their fair share and they're takers and not givers?
Well,
It's a loaded question.
It
is.
It is a loaded question. Where I go with that kind of perspective is I think about the role that Spurwink has actively pursued in our communities for a long time. So we make a real effort, for example, to be a good employer in a community, to be a good member of the community in terms of accessing services or buying services from local communities. So, for example, when we have facilities out in Limerick, we try to buy locally for our groceries. And rather than maybe a centralized operation, how can we support the local community in the services we get? We get the local plow guy to come and help dig us out. We also look for ways to build our vocational services so that our young people are engaging with local businesses. So as far as the piece of being a giver and a taker, we look to be a good community member and to be very active in supporting our own communities. And I guess that's how we respond to those kinds of concerns.
Do you think the model of the local participation is important in a state like Maine?
Local participation, you say?
Yeah, like engaging in the local community for the supports and services that you look for.
It is for us. I think it's very important because, we hear about local control in the schools and that piece of local involvement and engagement. And I think the same is true around nonprofits. And not only does it keep us connected with our own communities, but it makes us more accountable as well.
Mm. So if you had to pick one piece of what Spurwink does that makes you really proud, and I know that's a tough question.
You're asking me to choose my favorite child? Is that?
Yeah. Or I'll change the wording a little bit. What is the most cutting edge program that you've seen develop over the last couple of years at Spurwink?
So it goes without saying that I'm proud of all my programs.
Absolutely.
At the agency. And I have to give a shout out to the people that work at Spurwink. The commitment and the passion, the dedication, it is just breathtaking for me. And I'm always humbled and honored when I'm out in programs, when I'm talking to staff. It's amazing.
And I was at your fundraiser a couple
Oh,
months
yeah,
ago,
that's right.
and the energy there was phenomenal.
Thank you.
So, yes, I get that.
Oh, it's just.
But you still have to pick one.
Oh, well, I may pick
Cutting
more than,
edge.
I may pick more than one here.
Okay.
All right. So let me just. I'm going to talk for a minute about our schools. Our schools do work. I don't know if I would describe it as the term cutting edge. What we do, though, is so individualized to kids' needs who are otherwise struggling in a public school setting. So the local school district says, we need some help for this child. We think they'll do better with Spurwink. And they come to one of our schools. We tailor our program to that individual child in such a way that amazing progress is had for kids that are just not being successful in other settings. So the results that seem to happen in that setting over and over again, even though we know it's a challenge for schools to be able to pay for those services at the same time, the difference it makes is phenomenal. So I mentioned the schools.
All right. I'm going to let you think about it for a second.
I'm going to keep going. All right.
We will come back to it, but I do have to go to my midpoint identifier, or Deb in the booth will start yelling at me, and she's good at that. But before we do that, we go to our trivia question.
Uh-oh.
There's a good chance you're going to get this one, okay? What historic church in Cape Elizabeth was built in 1802 and added to the National Register? And we're going to come back after that, but this is WMPG Nonprofit Insider. This is listener-supported WMPG 90.9 and 104.1 FM community radio of Southern Maine and Eastern New Hampshire. I'm David Unger, host of Nonprofit Insider, and we have Eric Meyer, President and CEO of Spurwink Services, and Judy Ann Smith, Vice President of Strategy and Government Relations. Do you have an answer to the trivia question?
Well, you made me turn my phone off so I couldn't Google it. I have
No,
no
we
idea.
did that on purpose.
I am sorry. He gets the money.
I live in Whitefield, so doesn't that give me an out on this one?
Nope.
No.
I can tell you the name of the church in Whitefield that was built in 1804.
Nope. You're going to be very embarrassed when I tell you the name. The Spurwink Church.
Get out.
Man,
And it's on Spurwink Road.
Spurwink Road. Well, we know Spurwink Road well.
I am really embarrassed.
He searched long and hard for that question.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, I started looking up what the definition of Spurwink was to see if it
Yeah.
was actually a word about something. And so they came up with this.
I wish you'd asked me about the Rod and Gun Club, because there is a Spurwink Rod and Gun Club.
Absolutely.
I could have
And
answered that one.
It's right down the road from the
Yes,
Spurwink
sure.
Church.
Man,
All right. So,
I'll be ready for next time.
okay.
All right.
So let's go back. You were talking about the school program.
Yes.
And I asked you what cutting edge programs at the Spurwink Institute
Yep.
have,
So
or
there's
Spurwink Services.
So the school piece, multidisciplinary, tailored to individual kids in a way that is, I think, phenomenal and truly successful, and incorporates all the different kinds of services: occupational therapy, speech therapy, various types of therapeutic interventions that allow kids to be successful where it's very hard for them to be without those kinds of interventions. The other place that I'm really proud of is in our residential services for kids with autism, mental health needs, and developmental disabilities. Again, tailored to their needs, multidisciplinary in nature, team-based services that continually make a phenomenal difference in helping kids go back to their communities, get back with their families, and then transition to adulthood in some instances.
And what about in your role?
My favorite program?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking? Well, I would have started with the schools for sure. But I also think that we do a phenomenal job, and I really appreciate the stories that I hear from the folks that run our outpatient and community service programs. So we have case management and licensed therapists in many, many counties of the state providing services to families that are just really on the edge of whether they can sort of maintain their household. They need sometimes some mental health services. They need coordination for resources that they can gather in the community. We have a program that's like that also focuses up in the LA area on refugee populations. So just some really wonderful work that's being done for families that's making a huge difference in their lives. And it's a program that's, that we're offering in many different counties.
And I'm sure there's a price tag to running these services.
It's there's a lot of money involved. Absolutely. So
And you do a lot of fundraising?
we sure do. And as you mentioned earlier, our big event is in November, the humanitarian event of the year. But it's really a year-round operation for us to be able to spread the word in the community and to help people realize as they're making decisions about who they want to support or where they want some scarce donation dollars to go, that Spurwink is a place to consider.
But why should they consider it?
Yeah,
You have
David,
you have an open mic on to give it a shtick,
well,
right?
the way that I think about it is that anybody whose life has been touched by a family member or a friend or themselves with mental illness, autism, or developmental disabilities, and they want to make a difference for people whose lives are affected by those things, I would really want them to consider Spurwink as a way to help make a difference in those people's lives.
I'm picking up kind of a theme as we're going along, and tell me if I'm wrong, but you're not treating the services based on the individual. You're looking at the family systems involved, the supports to that individual,
Very
how
much
the
so.
community supports the individual and the family.
That's
So
exactly
you're looking
right.
at the global approach versus the individual one-to-one approach.
That's exactly right. And that's true whether we're working with adults who, say, are in a waiver-funded group home for developmental
Can
disabilities.
you explain what a waiver is? A lot of people may not know that.
Thank you. That's right. I was getting a little jargony there. So, yeah, in the state Maine Care program, which is Maine's Medicaid program, there's funding for individuals with intellectual disabilities or developmental disabilities, and that's known as waiver funding. And so we have some residential and some community service programs for those individuals. And to your point about engaging with families and engaging in the community, for those populations as well as for children, we're working with individuals engaging with their families, their natural supports, their identified family and community, because we think that we all do better in relationship and in community, and we have to bolster that.
Do you have any questions for me?
You've talked to a lot of nonprofits, or people that work in nonprofits.
Yes.
And you've learned a lot. And I'm wondering if you could just share a little bit of your wisdom about what you've learned from Maine nonprofits that you think that we could benefit, but others could benefit from.
The one piece that I think you took my shtick from me is the relationships. And I don't see enough nonprofits spending the needed time to build the relationships, not just with their constituents and their board, but with the general community. When I talk to development people, their focus is raising money, but they're not necessarily, and I'm being very general here, so I'm not, pinpointing anybody. But the general theme that I'm picking up is that they're not spending enough time cultivating those donor relationships. And if you think about the model of relationship-based fundraising, it's not going in and asking for the money right away. It's building the relationship so the donor wants to give to you. And, you're not putting that kind of pressure on them. So I see that there's so much shortcuts, a lot of shortcuts being taken to get to the dollar sign versus the energy and the resources put into increasing the dollar sign. Does that make sense?
Nice, yes.
And technology, I'm sure, is a piece of that too, in terms of how nonprofits are communicating outside of themselves for donors. I'm sure there's more going out through email and websites than there are through folks going out and getting to know. Like, I know our folks go out and develop relationships as best they can with anybody that is interested in learning about Spurwink. But I do think technology kind of takes away some of that personal touch.
Technology gives them a shortcut.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, because everybody says, well, we're going to have a fundraising drive and we'll put it up on our website. But how are you going to drive people to your website? And, what's going to inspire them to get there?
Right.
And, I've looked at your site and it's absolutely great. And, I think that the model that you've presented to the community is just absolutely phenomenal. So you should feel very proud about it.
Thank you.
And if someone wanted to contact you, how would they do that?
Spurwink.org.
Spurwink.org.
We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on the
But speaking of
I
electronic
know,
communication.
and barriers between people, but also maybe a way to connect. And 871-1200. So
Great. Do you feel that your clients are using technology enough?
more every day. I think that our clients participate with technology as our society has been evolving with it. So
And if I remember correctly, and I'm going back 10 years now, Spurwink used to have a very good assisted technology program.
we still do.
Okay.
And we're actually, it's nice that you've brought that up because I do know that the state is looking specifically at how to encourage more use of adaptive technologies and assistive technologies and promote that. And we're examining that right now to see how we can do more of that.
And I do some work with this population, and the thing that I have found is that there's still a stigma and barrier of this population even getting on a computer.
That's right.
So if we're expecting them to get emails and we're communicating via email and they're uncomfortable turning a computer on,
That's right.
then they're not getting the information they need.
Yeah, and more that will be true. I mean, our individualized approach is helpful in the sense that we know there are people on the full spectrum of the use of technology, for example. So people that are using it, we're able to engage with them that way and helping others learn how to do that. But you're absolutely right. There's a lot to be done in that area.
If you had a magic wand and you could change one thing overnight, what would it be?
I'd erase stigma.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Eric's mind is thinking so.
I think that it is so impacting to so many individuals that hold back from speaking up because they may need help. And I think that if we could erase the entire idea that someone with a need, whether it's behavioral health or whether it's physical health, has a problem with going to get help, if we could erase that, more people would get the help they need. They would be engaging in their communities more. They'd be better employees. I just think our society would be in a better place. And stigma goes across the board. It's not just about mental health. There's so many different kinds of stigma.
Right. Good.
I'm dreaming big on this one.
Go for it. It was an open-ended question.
Well, my magic wand, if I'm going to go like for the full boat here, is, I would want to see that mental illness, autism, and developmental disabilities were taken away, that those weren't impacting people's lives. That would be my dream. Now, as far as a more modest wish, for me, I think that we would be able to have the support and resources throughout our communities to care for those who need support, and that we could really be there for people in all the ways that they can benefit from.
Wow, that's great. We're going to leave it at that. I can't top that one. So thank you for being on the show. I hope it was beneficial to you and you were able to get your story out a little bit.
I really appreciate this, David. This is, not only was it fun, and not only did I get to read the weather for the first time in my life, but I really enjoyed the conversation. I appreciated the opportunity.
Good, and hopefully we'll have you back at some point.
Great.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Next week, we have Mike, and I know I'm going to mispronounce his name, Tarpianen, CEO of the Community Alliance. Did I get that right?
Tarpinian.
Tarpinian. Okay, Mike Tarpinian, CEO of Opportunity Alliance. The music appears courtesy of Mike Hubbard. You can find Mike's music on www.michaelhubbardmusic.com. Check out Mike's website to see where he's playing this weekend. Thanks to Deb Danger, NPI's executive engineer. You can catch Deb on Morning Street, Fridays at 6:30 a.m. Great show this morning, by the way. If you know of a nonprofit that should be on the show, please email me at npi@davidunger.net. Past shows are archived at www.tcmgr.com, NP Insider tab.